And you talked about expectations being subjective. I completely agree with you. And you said that this is a problem if that's not communicated effectively, which is absolutely right. And I think one of the key things around the procurement of services is accurate definition and the ability to update the definition of what's promised, so that
Correct.
you always know what has been promised and you can measure what has been delivered against what was contractually agreed. And that could be in a variation or change order that comes in along the way. And the other
Yeah.
side of it, that you brought up, which is very relevant as well, is unless you're auditing this, unless you're capturing it effectively in the agreement, and unless you have ongoing management of that agreement, you're never going to know why changes have taken place. Why has it taken longer? Why has it cost more? Why did it need to go in a different direction? Because it could be that the supplier is letting you down, but equally it could be that new information came into the program, or it could be that actually, from a client perspective, internal stakeholders have let the process down. They weren't there for meetings. They were ill. They were away. Whatever it might be.
That struggle is real, and it has gotten so much more intense in the last 20 years, where the buying organization is letting the supplier down and letting themselves down. So I see a lot fewer stakeholders willing to make time to meet with suppliers and have grown up conversations. Instead, they just want the lollipops and roses on the slide. Everything's fine. Number two, we don't have QBRs anymore. We might be able to meet once or twice a year. And so we're not getting enough information quickly enough when there are challenges in the industry that's going to disrupt the project. And number three, there's with the, I've been talking about this since 2018, we're here now. We are at the place where the boomers in the United States and in Europe have left the workforce by and large, and new generations of employees are coming in. And it's very disruptive from the perspective that the younger generations have not been properly trained. So boomers learned trial by fire. I'm not a boomer, pretty close, but I'm not. And I learned trial by fire. Some respects we're self-taught, my generation, the generation ahead of me, right? The boomers. The millennials, though, and the Zs, they haven't not had the time to self teach. What are they, 10, 15 years into the workforce? And they don't have the time to learn the 30 years that a boomer may have. And we certainly don't train the way we used to. People just don't have time for training anymore. So we've got a huge issue too, where we've got a lot of people coming in who have literally, they're telling me, I have never done anything like this before. Never. Whether it's a subject matter expert or the person that I'm mentoring. And it's like, wow, this is a lot of money for never have done this before.
Yeah, I mean, the to a certain extent, the issues you just highlighted are mitigated and counterbalanced by things like, the fact I've got every bit of information humans have ever
Yeah.
known in my pocket, and I can go onto YouTube and I can watch one of your videos about
Yeah.
outcome-based contracts, for example. And I think that's where the level of information and the technology needs to bridge the gap that may exist if people aren't given the same level of training. And as you say, there's this kind of generational changeover.
Yeah.
Um, but the pace that things need to be done is quicker. The pace of change is quicker, and the skew towards buying services versus buying goods is happening quite rapidly. In the sense that, of course, lots of organizations still buy goods and materials, but lots of organizations buy more services than ever before. I think the figures that Tom was quoting in a white paper that he put out was that the growth in services spending is 5 times faster than the growth in spending on goods, which is pretty crazy. And so therefore you've got this potential knowledge gap. You've got, I would argue, a technology gap where the technology is not specifically designed to deal with the nuances of services. And then you've got this kind of conceptual gap where in procurement, I feel like we're talking about goods versus services. I think a lot of procurement teams and senior procurement people don't view the world like that. It's something that's kind of literally going through my head as I'm talking, because we're talking about it from a contractual point of view, and it's quite clear the differences in terms of how a contract is structured, and the difficulties in structuring a contract for buying a tangible thing that might have a complex supply chain, but that's by the by, that's a managed, that's a solved problem, versus the complete opposite, where you're buying a service that probably has a simplistic supply chain in most cases, but is very difficult to define and very difficult to measure. So I feel like that is a problem that from a contractual point of view, a technology point of view, and to a certain extent, a supplier relationship or, supply chain point
Yeah.
of view, hasn't been at the forefront.